The United States has announced that it will be relocating its Vatican embassy. They say it will now be a part of a building on the compound of the larger American embassy to Italy. The State Department notes that security and cost savings were behind the move, with the department estimating it will now save $1.4 million a year. The Vatican is a landlocked sovereign city-state within the city of Rome, and it's the smallest internationally recognized independent territory in the world. Now, the shift has drawn criticism from former U.S. representatives to the Holy See, along with others, who insist that countries should maintain embassies to the Vatican and to Rome in separate locations. Now, this consolidation comes just after the Holy See's representative at the UN weighed in on the debate about the use of drones. The representative condemned targeted killings and raised both legal and moral concerns. In recent days, the Pope also said, quote, "How can it be that it is not a news item when an elderly homeless person dies of exposure, but it is news when the stock market loses 2 points? This is a case of exclusion. Can we continue to stand by when food is thrown away while people are starving? This is a case of inequality." And also, here's a picture of the Pope with an anti-fracking shirt. So could the new outspokenness of the Vatican be behind the closure? To discuss this development a little bit more, I'm joined now by Jimmy Akin, a senior apologist at Catholic.com. Jimmy, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Amira.
So the State Department is citing security concerns as one of the reasons to relocate this embassy. Now, this might make a little more sense to me, I guess, if we were talking about embassies in the Middle East. But we're talking about the Vatican. What kinds of security concerns could it possibly pose?
Well, there's been some people who've tried to connect it to the Benghazi attack back on 9/11. And as you mentioned, that occurred in a Middle Eastern country, and you sometimes have kind of mobs develop. I mean, we've seen that across the Middle East, and you had a mob apparently organized to break in and kill people. But it's hard to imagine that happening in Rome. And so that couldn't be what they're thinking. What they might be thinking is some kind of terrorist plot that would be trying to target U.S. Interests in Rome. Perhaps, I mean, it wouldn't involve a big mob or anything like that. It might involve a bomb or something, or a sniper or something like that. But you just wouldn't get that big mob effect in Rome. Not of people trying to break in and burn everything and kill people. So that's unreasonable. There have been a lot of people who've questioned whether that's really their motive at all.
Right.
And so I would tend to be I would at least have a question in my mind about to what extent is that their actual motive. Same thing with cost savings. $1 million a year to a government that spends trillions is peanuts. I mean, it's less than peanuts. And you just know if you downgrade your embassy with somebody, they're going to take that as a slap. And so a lot of people have suggested that the administration is actually trying to distance itself from the Vatican.
Well, that's what I want to actually jump in, because I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because as I'm sure you know, the Pope has been very vocal about everything from drones to fracking. And this has all been, you know, in the last few months or so. Is it at all possible that this consolidation is a result of that tension, of those criticisms that we're hearing?
I think that's easily possible. On the other hand, you can't underestimate government cluelessness. So there could be that factor at work as well. It could be an attempt to distance itself from the Vatican, to signal displeasure with the Vatican. That's certainly how the Vatican's going to take it, whether they object publicly or not.
Right.
And so it's either deliberate or it's just clueless.
Okay, well, I want to talk about something a U.S. representative said. A former U.S. ambassador, James Nicholson, called the move, quote, a massive downgrade in U.S. Vatican ties, turning the Vatican embassy into, quote, a stepchild of the embassy to Italy.
Right.
What's your response to that?
Well, I think he's right. And it's not just him who's been saying that. It's 5 of the recent U.S. ambassadors to the Vatican from both Republican and Democratic administrations have been saying this. Right.
Well, this move is also getting some resistance, of course, from conservative Catholics who prefer to maintain diplomatic distance from U.S. policies. Can you talk a little bit about the U.S. policies that Catholics, take most issue with?
Well, the U.S. and the Holy See see eye to eye on some issues like helping poor people, for example, and that's very good. On the other hand, the current administration does take positions that are in opposition to those of the Catholic Church. For example, on the religious liberty question, the current administration has been trying to force insurance policies on Catholics that would violate their consciences. And just yesterday, the Supreme Court announced it was going to be hearing two cases that are challenging the government's healthcare mandate requiring Catholics who object to abortion to provide abortion drugs as part of their insurance policies. So that would be an example. You mentioned the subject of using drones to kill people remotely. That's obviously something that the Holy See has concerns about. And there are a range of other things, but in general, this administration hasn't been particularly sensitive to the concerns of Catholics.
Yeah, and we only have 30 seconds left, and you did touch on this. The Vatican hasn't publicly commented on these reports, but given the kind of person Pope Francis is, do you think it's likely that we'll see him object to this at all?
I don't think so. I mean, he could, but I would be surprised if he did. Typically, with diplomatic stuff like this, even if you're really unhappy with someone's move and you take it as a slight, you tend not to say so publicly. There's more in gestures than is often conveyed in words in diplomatic circles.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but Jimmy Akin, a senior apologist at Catholic.com, thank you.